Space is silent. It is a vacuum. Sound cannot travel. But radio waves can. And if you know how to listen, the silence of space is actually a cacophony of beeps, static, and signals. Sometimes you hear the hum of a satellite. Sometimes you hear the telemetry of a rocket. And sometimes you hear a voice. Imagine you are sitting in a small room in Turin, Italy. It is May 23, 1961, the height of the Cold War. You are huddled over a homemade radio receiver. You are wearing headphones. The static is loud. You are listening for the distinct beep 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 of a Soviet capsule. But instead of a beep, you hear a human voice. It is a woman's voice. She is speaking Russian. She is panicked. Listen, listen, come in, talk to me. You turn up the volume. Your hands are shaking. I am hot, she says. I am hot, it is dangerous flame. You hear a noise that sounds like wind tearing through metal. I see a flame, she screams. I am hot, 32, 41, am I going to crash? And then the transmission cuts. The signal dies. There is only the static of the empty universe. You wait for the news. You wait for the Soviet Union to announce a tragedy. You wait for the world to mourn the brave female cosmonaut who burned up on reentry. But the news never comes. The next day, the newspapers are silent. The Kremlin says nothing. According to history books, no Russian woman went into space until Valentina Tereshkova 2 years later. So, who was the woman screaming in your headphones? Was she a ghost, a hoax? Or was she a lost cosmonaut, a human being launched into the dark, erased from history because she didn't come back alive? This is the story of the Judica-Cordiglia brothers. It is the story of two amateur radio hackers who outsmarted the superpowers. It is a story of heartbeats in the void, SOS signals moving asterisk away from Earth, and the terrifying possibility that the first humans in space didn't return to parades. They drifted into eternity. If you are fascinated by the secrets of the Cold War and the eerie mysteries of the final frontier, please hit that subscribe asterisk button right now. You need to hear this story, because it suggests that the night sky is not a graveyard of stars, but a graveyard of secrets. To understand the mystery, we have to understand the listeners. Achille and Giovanni Judica-Cordiglia were not spies. They were geeks. They lived in Turin, Italy. They were geniuses with electronics. In the late 1950s, the space race was starting. The US and the USSR were firing rockets. Everyone was obsessed. The brothers decided they didn't just want to read about it, they wanted to hear it. They scavenged scrap metal. They bought surplus WWII radio gear. They built a listening station in a concrete bunker outside Turin, at a place called Torre Bert. They built a massive antenna dish. It was impressive. It was arguably better than what some governments had. They figured out the frequencies the Soviets were using to communicate with their Sputnik satellites. And they started listening. On October 4, 1957, they picked up the beep of Sputnik 1. They were ecstatic. They recorded it on tape. But as the years went on, the sounds changed. The beeps became complex telemetry. And then the beeps became biological. May 1960. 1 year before Yuri Gagarin officially became the first man in space. The brothers were scanning the frequencies. They picked up a signal. It wasn't a machine, it was a rhythm. Thump thump, thump thump. They analyzed it, it was a heartbeat. But it was too slow to be a dog like Leica. It was too controlled. It was a human heart. They recorded the sound of a human being breathing and struggling in orbit. The Soviets announced nothing. Days later, the signal stopped. The brothers believed they had just listened to a failed manned launch, a pilot who died of heart failure or suffocation before the official first flight. They called it the SOS to the world. But the world wasn't listening. Only two brothers in Italy knew that a heart had stopped beating in the sky. November 28, 1960. The brothers picked up another signal. This one was different. It wasn't a heartbeat. It was a Morse code signal. SOS, the universal cry for help. But when the brothers triangulated the signal, they noticed something terrifying. The signal wasn't orbiting the Earth. In an orbit, the signal gets louder as it passes overhead and quieter as it goes over the horizon. The Doppler effect changes the pitch. This signal wasn't orbiting. It was moving away. The signal was getting weaker and weaker, moving in a straight line asterisk away from the planet. The implication was chilling. A capsule had been launched, but the retro-rockets failed. Instead of slowing down to re-enter Earth's atmosphere, the capsule had overshot. It had broken Earth's gravity. The cosmonaut inside was not falling home. They were drifting out into the solar system. The brothers listened as the SOS signal grew faint. It tapped and tapped and tapped until it faded into the background radiation of the universe. That human being is likely still out there, a frozen mummy in a metal tin, drifting past Mars, forever signaling for a rescue that cannot come. February 2, 1961. The brothers picked up a transmission that still haunts audiophiles today. It was recorded just a few months before Gagarin's flight. They heard heavy, labored breathing, gasping, then a coughing sound. It sounded like a person suffocating, like a diver running out of air. The brothers recorded the sounds of a man dying as his life support system failed. Again, the Soviet Union announced nothing. They claimed they had only launched a heavy satellite. But heavy satellites don't cough. April 12, 1961. Yuri Gagarin launched. He orbited the Earth. He returned. He was hailed as the first man in space, a hero. The Judica-Cordiglia brothers recorded him too. They heard his voice. It was calm. It was triumphant. But the brothers weren't celebrating. They knew he wasn't the first. They believed he was just the first to survive asterisk. They believed he was the first, public, face of a program that had been grinding up human lives in secret for years. Gagarin was the success story. The others were the rough drafts. And then came the most controversial recording of all. May 1961. We return to the hook of our story. The brothers detected a capsule re-entering the atmosphere. They tuned in. They expected telemetry. They heard a woman. We have to analyze the transcript of this recording. It is terrifying. The voice is high-pitched. It is strained. The G-forces are crushing her. 5, 4, 3, she counts down. Then talk to me. I am hot. I am hot. Then a change in tone, desperation. It is dangerous, flame. Then weeping. I see a flame, I see a flame. And then the static takes her. This recording suggests a heat shield failure. When a capsule re-enters the atmosphere, it hits the air at 17,000 miles per hour. Friction turns the air into plasma. The temperature outside is 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit. If the heat shield is damaged, or if the angle is wrong, the capsule doesn't deflect the heat. It absorbs it. The person inside is incinerated. The brothers believed they listened to a female cosmonaut burned to death alive. 3 days later, the Soviet news agency TASS announced that a large unmanned satellite had burned up on reentry. Unmanned. The brothers knew better. Now, we have to look at this with a critical eye. This is a documentary, not a ghost story. We need facts. For decades, NASA and Western experts dismissed the Judica-Cordiglia recordings. They said, 1. The Doppler effect. Some critics said the brothers didn't account for the Doppler shift correctly. 2. The language. Some Russian speakers claim the grammar in The Woman in Fire recording is awkward, suggesting it might be a scripted hoax or a test transmission. 3. The capacity. The Soviets didn't have a capsule capable of carrying a woman in May 1961. Vostok was a single-seater. However, the brothers were not frauds. They were respected. NASA eventually invited them to the U.S. They toured facilities. They were treated as experts. And then the Soviet Union fell. The Iron Curtain lifted, and the archives opened. In the 1990s, we learned the truth about the Soviet space program. It was a disaster. We learned about Valentin Bondarenko, ***. He was a cosmonaut. He died in March 1961, just before Gagarin. He didn't die in space. He died in a pressure chamber fire on the ground during training. The Soviets covered it up for 20 years. They airbrushed him out of photos. This proved that the Soviets were erasing dead cosmonauts. If they erased Bondarenko, who died on the ground, would they hesitate to erase someone who died in space? We learned about Vladimir Komarov, ***, the man who fell from space in 1967, Soyuz 1. His parachute failed. He crashed into the Earth at full speed. U.S. listening stations in Turkey recorded him crying and cursing his commanders as he fell to his death. This proved that the Soviets did have catastrophic failures that resulted in screaming deaths on the radio. So while the specific identity of the woman in the fire has never been confirmed in the Russian archives, the premise of the brothers' work, that the Soviets were hiding bodies, was 100% correct. There is a theory known as the Zero Cosmonauts. It posits that Gagarin was not Cosmonaut 1, he was Cosmonaut 3 or 4. The others, Alexis Ledovsky, Serhii Shiborin, Andrei Mitkov ***, are names that appear in conspiracy theories and leaks. Did the Judica-Cordiglia brothers record one of these men? The heartbeats, the breathing. The dates align perfectly with the gaps in the official Soviet schedule. There were launches that were announced as satellites, but had the mass of a Vostok capsule. Why launch a satellite that weighs exactly the same as a human ship, on a trajectory for humans, but claim it's just a radio test? Unless the cargo was biological. Let's go back to the bunker in Turin. Imagine being Giovanni or Achille. You are 20 years old. You are sitting in the dark. You hear a woman screaming that she is burning. You can't call the police. You can't call NASA. You can't do anything. You are the only witness to a murder committed by physics and politics. The trauma of that responsibility stayed with the brothers forever. They kept the tapes in a vault. They released them years later, not for fame but as a memorial. They wanted the world to know that these voices existed. That these weren't just failed experiments, they were people. The most haunting recording remains the SOS moving away from Earth. It brings up a terrifying existential horror. Death in space is usually fast, explosion, decompression, fire. But drifting is slow. If the capsule was airtight, that cosmonaut could have lived for days or weeks, watching the Earth get smaller, watching the sun rise and set, knowing that you are the first human to leave the cradle of Earth, but you will never stop leaving. You are becoming a comet. Did they starve? Did they suffocate? Or did they open the airlock to end it? The brothers listened until the signal faded. That implies the person was alive and transmitting for a long time, long enough to realize that nobody was coming. The story of the Lost Cosmonauts is a hidden documentary because it challenges the glorious narrative of space exploration. We see the flags, we see the footprints. We don't see the bodies. Space exploration is dangerous. It is built on a mountain of trial and error. And in the Cold War, error was not an option. Error was erased. The Judica-Cordiglia brothers remind us that history is written by the victors, but the truth is broadcast in the radio waves. You just have to be willing to tune in. Achille and Giovanni are old men now, but they still have the tapes. Modern digital analysis has cleaned up the audio. The woman's voice is clearer than ever. I am hot, flame, I see flame. It doesn't sound like a test. It sounds like the final testament of a soul who was sacrificed on the altar of the space race. So the next time you look up at the night sky, remember that it's not just empty space. There are ghosts up there. And if you have a radio and you listen to the static between the stars, you might just hear them. This story is one of the creepiest things I've ever researched. The audio recordings are available online, and they are bone-chilling. Do you think the woman in the fire was real? Or was it an elaborate Soviet hoax to confuse the Americans? Let me know your verdict in the comments. If you are fascinated by the dark side of history and the secrets they keep from us, please hit that asterisk like asterisk button and subscribe asterisk. I have a story coming next week about a lighthouse where 3 keepers vanished, leaving a meal untouched on the table. And yes, I will finally reveal the full details of the Mercury theory. Stay safe, keep listening, and watch the skis.